We describe life in the United States under the early Cold War. After World War II, there was very little question that the United States had obtained what it had started during the 1890s in the Spanish-American War, which was global superpower status. Because the U.S. had achieved victory in the war in the Pacific, it allowed them to increase their influence in the region, into China, Korea, and Vietnam specifically. The U.S. maintained islands in the Pacific for bases, for alliances, to establish itself as a protector in the Pacific, and for nuclear testing. The U.S. took on communist organizations within its sphere of influence on the domino theory, groups like the Viet Cong. The U.S. pushed for a loyalty to American social and economic values among its allies and partners. Under a post-war economic boom, all things American took a hard line towards consumerism. This boom also led to an increased role of the U.S. as a service economy, as more and more people joined the middle class as managers. Multinational corporations took the industrial jobs to developing nations. If those developing nations nationalized too much, that's when they'd be visited by U.S. intervention in economics or military. Inside of the United States, corporations and the government used the communist threat as incentive to keep the population buying goods and services. Allowing the use of credit reminded them that the purchases were a greater U.S. market economy against the central planning Soviets. In order to maintain power, the multinational corporations and the government pushed a massive agenda designed to boost the U.S. dollar, global trade, and create American loyalty in its citizens towards consumption. The atomic bomb detonation in 1945 and the H-bomb in 1952 showed their global might. The American factories of the industrial age gave way to automation, which led to union strikes. Anti-union legislation, coupled with tying labor to socialism and government takeover of essential industries, weakened the position of labor. By 1960, the U.S. was a center for trading consumer goods, the production of mass culture, advertising, and corporate mergers. To ensure the loyalty of American citizens to the American way, the U.S. government took on suspected communists and subversives through FBI, NSA, McCarthy, and HUAC investigations. Communist art was blacklisted, segregation of minorities was common, even comic books self-censored themselves with the comic book code. The U.S. media and the government bolstered ideas of a wholesome America through images of truth, liberty, and justice, the goodness of authority figures, and the banning of sexuality and grotesque images on television, movies, broadcasting, and comics. And despite the push for free markets and free choice, censorship was common in popular culture. Those who were critical of the government were often investigated, blacklisted, and some were even executed for subversion. The nation found community, identity, and a sense of American values of competition and individualism through sports like baseball, basketball, and football. America's automated economy required a great deal of land and resources, which had a very negative impact on the American landscape and its agriculture. In a process known as white flight, the white populations moved to the suburbs while leaving minorities in increasing urban areas without a tax base. A massive baby boom occurred after World War II, which led to a push for women to stay home and a youth consumer movement. Overall, life improved with better medical care and education.